Welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Thank you all for being with us today. And just to remind our listening audience, if you're listening on Talking Alternative right now, we are live streaming on Facebook. Just go to Facebook, look for me, your Conscious Consultant, Sam Liebowitz, Liebowitz, and you should see the live stream video there. So let's get back to our guest, Simone, as I flip the camera around. There we go. There she is. All right. Well, beautiful, Simone. So last segment, we kind of talked about, your background as a pharmacist and then doing market research and wanting to really help and work with people. And that kind of brought you into this coaching and sort of business coaching. But was there something in particular or some incident or light bulb moment when you decided to really wanting to focus on leadership?
Yes, because for me, when you look at it from working in the quote unquote medical realm, and then going into the corporate realm, and then having that experience within in France and experiencing the different cultures and the different type of leadership styles, you kind of look back and you're like, whoa. It was like really from, all left to right and then in between.
And may I ask a personal question?
Sure.
As a woman of color, did you find you were treated extremely differently in different cultures? Or did it not really make that much of a difference?
If it did, I wasn't conscious to it.
Okay. All right, good.
But because in terms of when I was in, for example, in Europe, in Versailles, I was always trying to learn the language and trying to, in terms of showing the effort of doing that. So that should be, but, also you raise a good point though, Sam, in terms of women in leadership and what that really means. Because I do find that when you look at it from the woman's perspective, they're afraid to even sit at the table or even have the voice to be heard. Or, even going for that job that they really, really want, but they may not have all the skill sets, if they have even 40% and not the full 100% really going for it. So definitely those were some things that I also saw that kind of helped me kind of to focus more in terms of looking at those things and those soft skills, if you will, as part of the overall leadership makeup.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask because I see so many more women today kind of stepping into this leadership role, and I think a lot of people still aren't used to it. And I do hear that there is still a lot of resistance to it, and especially it's like as a minority, or I shouldn't say a woman of color, it's like you almost have two strikes against you. First, you're a person of color, and then you're also a woman. But it's nice to see sort of that shifting and changing, and I really do see sort of this evolution of consciousness where it's making less and less difference to at least more educated people. I mean, there's still places where there's bigotry. It's still alive and well. I think we've seen that through sort of the Obama presidency. Whether you like him or hate him is besides the point. There has been so much out and out racism against him purely because he was black. And let's call a spade, right? And so it's still alive, but at least I find in the business world, in the more educated circles that most people travel in, it's less and less needing to be part of the conversation because it's not having as much of an impact as it used to.
When we look at it from that perspective, it really takes it. There's a couple twofold, right? When you look at that, yes, we are in more positions of leadership and of influence, really, and being able to create that culture to enable us to do that. But we still have a little ways to go.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yes.
In terms of that, and I think it's also a mindset and a muscle that must be utilized and exercised a lot, and being comfortable around that. But for example, I was working with one client where she said, the feedback to her was, you need to smile more. As she was leading her team, and just those little subtle things that they, in terms of what the perceptions are and your whole around your whole branding too in that leadership role, and what that kind of means in terms of the subtleties of being able to influence.
So, what kinds of, and there are a lot out there, what kinds of misconceptions do you find when you talk to people about leadership? Do you think commonly pop up in people's minds?
Sure. Well, it's like, and the perceptions are changing, but it's not just about being in position of power. It's not just about a title, right? It's not just about having, your folders and powers and different mandates, if you will.
Right.
So, so in terms of that concept of I'm in charge and you do what I say, and that's it, and it's not top down. It's not top down. It's very organic now.
Right.
Well, I mean, three things to me that come around leadership is about being able to show the possibilities, being able to influence, and then also being able to empower. And I think those are like more of the organically grown and really displays of leadership that I've seen where have been very effective.
Yes. And it's interesting because we're really now seeing the real sort of effect of this third wave. Alvin Toffler wrote the book The Third Wave back in like 1981, I think it is. And a good friend of mine, Cynthia Greenwald, teaches all this networking stuff based on this idea of third wave thinking. And even back then in the 80s, before there was any Facebook or web or anything, Toffler said that we're going from a very hierarchical structure to a web, a web of webs, of constellation of constellations. Absolutely. So that it is getting more flat, and leadership doesn't come from authority anymore, but from our ability to inspire, relate, and as I talked about in my quotes, really be authentic and come from the heart, so that you really, people relate to who you are as a person.
Absolutely. It's all about the connection, because we're so connected now in different ways, right? And in terms of the bombardment that we have on our brain.
Yes.
And the things are going so quickly. There's so many things to think about if you're in management or your families and outside families, your communities, your volunteer work. All those things play into the overall, your role. Leader does not have to be in a business or a corporate world. The leader is the person who's a parent. If they have their team, that's your team. You're in the community. You're doing things and helping and having that positive ripple effect on the lives of others.
Absolutely.
And influencing them to really take charge of things that they may have even thought of about even doing. And that's all about the empowerment piece also, right?
Right. Because, I mean, now it's all about learning to empower your team to do a bunch of stuff that it can't be all on you.
Absolutely.
You need, it's not a solo leadership anymore. It's about being a leader of leaders.
Absolutely. And it's all about trust.
Yes.
Right? Because not only trust in others, but really in yourself first.
Yes.
And that's where all the intentions and the purpose comes from being comfortable with self.
Right.
And once you're able to get what's so about what the strengths are, what your weaknesses are, where your areas that you want to grow, right? And just being, and like you said earlier, vulnerability, and showing that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Right, exactly. Just a quick shout out to one of our Facebook peeps, Barbara, said wonderful, and gave us a thumbs up. Thank you, Barbara. Glad you're tuning in. So you also like to talk about leadership and essence. Tell our audience, what's essence, and why is it so important?
Absolutely. Essence is that core. It's the things you peel away, the onion, you peel away and you get to that core. And it's really what's driving your intentions and your purpose. And in terms of being really, truly authentic to self, authentic to others, in terms of what you think, what you do, and how you act. And you talked about alignment. That's all about it, right?
Yes.
In terms of that alignment.
So getting back to our essence. So, how do you tell when somebody is not coming from their essence? They have the hope. I think if you don't believe it, others won't. Okay.
And they won't buy it.
Right.
And if you can't tell your why about what you're doing in terms of all those intentions and how you are in the world, you're being in the world, people can sense that.
Yeah. Have you ever coached somebody or seen somebody who so believed their own BS it was like you couldn't get them to see they're not really being authentic or they're not being in alignment?
Yes. Yes, and actually and it goes around the whole perception is reality, right? And it's not your perception, it's their perception.
Right.
And, when kind of was coaching this individual around that, their whole personal branding and a leadership style. Right. What really came out in terms of, well, I'm this way, but I said, well, let's take a step back and look at how you're communicating. How are you being heard? You know? And it wasn't only with his team at work, but in terms of your family. How are you relating? And then once he was able to do that exercise and really see for himself where he kind of, the gradient and where he was, that's when the aha moments came.
So it's that whole idea of kind of like how we show up in business is the same way we show up at home, is the same way we show up in our friendships and our relationships and in volunteers and whatever. I mean, we are who we are. Absolutely. And it's like you really got to look at your whole life and not sort of, you know, compartmentalize, right? Like that's the whole big thing. Oh, I have to compartmentalize, but that doesn't work, does it?
Like I have to be, I have to be this way because I'm at work. But no, if you're being this way, chances are you're being that way at home, and how it impacts everybody else in terms of who you're connecting with, and how it's landing in terms of what you're saying, how you're saying it, and do people really want to connect with you?
Right, exactly. And I want to maybe briefly before we go to break talk about the benefits of shared leadership. Like when you go around and we're trying to empower our team and really help others to become leaders as well. Like for some people that can be pretty threatening because they may think like, oh, I'm giving up some of my power by helping these people to be leaders. Why should somebody do that? And what are the challenges in that?
Consider that if you're getting resistance around sharing, developing others, there's something else going on there. But think about it too. If you want more, you have to give more. If you have to, that's where the training comes in. That's where there's the sharing of ideas. Because if you're demonstrating that as the leader, chances are your team will reciprocate even more. And so if if it's coming up here and all of a sudden you're sharing your vulnerabilities, you're sharing your key learnings, you're sharing best practices, it's an open environment. It's an area where they're saying, okay, it's okay to take risks. It's okay to share information openly and in terms of being authentic about that sharing for the greater good.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's time for us to take another commercial break. For our people listening on Facebook, I think Facebook's going to stop this video at 30 minutes. I will restart it. So if you get cut off, please just go to the next video. I'll start it during the commercial break. And when we come back, well, let's talk about some practical stuff. Let's do some case studies, some examples about how to apply all this. Okay, Simone?
Great.
Wonderful. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back.